a very warm welcome to all of you. I, Sanandi Sachdeva, on behalf of Jaipuria Institute of Management, welcome you all to the virtual platform. Let me introduce our viewers connected with us on all the virtual platform with the dignitaries on the virtual platform. We have with us Mr. Sameer Kishore, President and Chief Executive Officer, Milestone Technologies. A very warm welcome, Mr. Sameer. We are glad to have you here today. We have with us Sri Shishir Jaipuria, Chairman, Jaipuria Group of Educational Institutions. Welcome, sir.
Namaskar ji.
We also have with us Dr. Devendra Narang, Director, Jaipuria Institute of Management. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Sadanand Prushti, Dean Academics, Jaipuria Institute of Management. Welcome, sir. Dr. Ashwini Vashne, Dean Student Welfare. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And I am Assistant Professor Sanandi Sachdeva, Jaipuria Institute of Management. A very warm welcome to all my colleagues, the faculty, the intellectual capital of Jaipuria Institute of Management, and our dear students. Jaipuria Institute of Management was set up in the year 2001. The institute is a part of Jaipuria Group of Educational Institutions, which has been at the forefront when it comes to providing ethically sound and intellectually capable managers to the industry. Jaipuria Institute of Management is the leading business school in northern India. The institute has been successfully offering world-class management education for past several years. The institute was set up in the year 2001, and since its inception, it has been creating managers of quality who are building the culture of mutual trust. We are NAC-A accredited institute offering Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University's approved 2-year full-time MBA program. I now take the opportunity to invite Dr. Devendra Narang for the welcome address. Dr. Narang is the Director, Jaipuria Institute of Management, an academician, an avid researcher, and acclaimed teacher. Over to you, sir.
Very good morning to all of you. I, Professor Devendra Narang, welcome you all in this virtual platform. We are very pleased to have with us Mr. Sameer Kishore, President and CEO, Milestone Technology today. I also welcome Shri Shishir Jaipuria, Chairman, Jaipuria Group of Educational Institution on this virtual platform. Well, today's topic, the role of leadership in turbulent time, is extremely close to our hearts. The role of leader in this crucial time in every organizations and even all the times. But yes, when turbulence arises, especially like pandemic we are facing now, the role of leaders becomes even more tough as well as important. Well, the world has been fortunate enough to witness many leaders in the worst scenario possible, be it the business leader or the spiritual leader or the political leader like we have the Mr. Narendra Modi. They have helped edit the economy and mankind to rise from this worst situation. Today, we have with us President and CEO of Milestone Technology. We are honored to welcome Mr. Sameer Kishore, who is the heading Milestone Technology of Fremont, California, with an employee base of more than 3,000 people, as he mentioned, and serving more than 200 clients and operating in almost 36 different countries. Well, student, you must know that Milestone Technology have evolved significantly, both organically and via the merger and acquisitions over the past 2 decades. Well, it is not every day one gets an opportunity to hear from a leader and visionary who has earned so much of respect in not only in the Silicon Valley in US, but the whole world by his innovative way to help their client to work at their maximum potential. What gives me immense happiness that he is an alumnus of the Seth Anandaram Jaipuria School, Kanpur. And Chairman Sir, under your able guidance and support and vision, we are actually serving not just in India, but in the whole world with the leaders like Mr. Sameer Kishore. understanding leadership from one of the most seasoned leader is an opportunity in itself. So not only this, understanding the role of leadership in most turbulent times in the humanity make these discussions very important. Without much adding to this, I once again welcome our guest of the day, Mr. Samir, and our chairman, Shri Shishir Jaipuria. Thank you very much for being with us once again and looking forward to a great session and full of the learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. May I now invite Sri Shishir Jaipuria, Chairman, Jaipuria Group of Educational Institutions, a true leader in all senses, the one who supports us through thick and thin, our moral support, an industrialist, a philanthropist. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, friends. I'm extremely delighted to be part of this program, which has been organized by Dr. Narang on a topic which is very contemporary and relevant, the role of leadership in turbulent times. We are going through this pandemic, the worst that we have seen over a century, and we have a lot of challenges, a lot of lives we have lost, a lot of misery has been there, a lot of livelihoods have been affected, and the whole medical system in India seems to have collapsed. But despite all these challenges, we are resilient, we are having the courage to be able to face it, and we will overcome this situation. And I'm hopeful about that all of us will come much more stronger. We all know that the world tomorrow will be very different. The way we have been working till now, the normal that was there earlier will not be the new normal. And I'm happy that we have with us a very seasoned person, Mr. Samir Kishore, who is our alumni. And I was just chatting to him before we have got live on the webinar that he's an alumni of 1986 batch, having worked with Wipro, Dell, IBM, and now running his own private equity firm, which has more than 3,000 people. The way he has risen up the ladder, the amount of leadership qualities and experiences that he would be able to share with us will be something. In fact, I'm wanting to listen to him. That's why I'm here, rather than speaking about anything as far as leadership is concerned. But I was happy to also know that he was the school captain, and he mentioned to me that as a school captain, he was able to imbibe a lot of leadership values. We know that a leader today will also not only have short-term goals, but a long-term vision. He has to be compassionate, he has to be caring, he has to not look only after profits, but also look after all the stakeholders which are involved, and has to lead responsibly. And hence, we have to create a bench of leaders within the organization, because leadership will not reside only at the top. Leadership would mean a team effort. It will require understanding that you are not alone. You have to carry everybody together, and you also have to care for nature. Hence, the whole dynamics of leadership is evolving, is changing for the good. And we do hope that today's session will give us a lot of new insights. And we look forward to the views of Mr. Samir. And I'll be grateful, sir, that I'll also be learning something from you. Thank you indeed, and welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Now, go ahead, please. Keep going.
No, sir, please, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I was having some network issues just as we went live. So I don't know if you guys saw me. I was kind of freezing a little bit here and there. So my sincere apologies, if I was not able to catch, all of the conversation. But truly, it's a privilege for me to be here. Again, there is when I think about, and you were just talking about this earlier, right? We think about, my roots in Kanpur and, where I grew up, and I went to school, grade 7th onwards at St. Ram Jaipuria School in Kanpur, and I have some very, very fond memories. So it truly is, an honor for me to be here in the company of, Mr. Shishir Jaipuria and all the faculty here as well, and totally delighted to be here. And I'm hoping that, once the pandemic is behind us, I get an opportunity to, kind of be there in person with all the students and, kind of share a little bit more of my experiences.
So that would indeed be a great pleasure for us. Hoping for the pandemic to get end soon.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Shishir sir. Turbulence. Whether you are flying an aeroplane or running an industry, whether you are at the helm affairs in a prestigious educational institution or running a country, the one who decides to stay calm in the most adverse circumstances, and not just staying calm, but thinking compassionately and bringing out of the box solutions without a shred of fear, without a pinch of doubt about the outcome, and leaving the critics for historians to decide the outcome without actually facing the typhoon in the vast sea on a small boat. Steve Jobs did that. So did Ratan Tata. Mother Teresa did that. So did Ram Krishna Paramhans. In different circumstances, each one of them. They did what was not best only for them, but millions of people. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we are talking about leaders. Let me welcome Mr. Samir Kishore, President and Chief Executive Officer, Milestone Technologies. With himself, he brings more than 25 years of rich experience in driving exponential growth in the technology services sector. Mr. Kishore has built global businesses and led many transformation initiatives. As a customer focused and performance driven leader, he believes in personally establishing and nurturing business relationships and building cross functional teams that have exceeded corporate and business objectives. A well traveled professional, he has led and worked with diverse nationalities, backgrounds, and cultures and integrated into one global team. Previously, Mr. Kishore was with IBM Global Technology Services as General Manager Financial Services, Global Technology Services, North America. He has also been associated with Dell, NTT Data, Wipro. He is an alumni of NMIMS, Christ Church College, and Jaipuria School, Kanpur. We are really pleased to have you with us, sir. Over to you.
Great. Thank you so much again, Mr. Deva. And again, as I said, it's my privilege to be here. And really, as I said, I'm going to say one more time, I owe a great deal of whatever little success that I've had in my life to the foundation that I got at Jaipuria School in Kanpur, the teachers, the administration. I think the opportunity that you and the late Dr. Jaipuria, Dr. Rajaram Jaipuria gave, the information that we got from the likes of Mr. Chatterjee, who was, principal for many, many years, and then production and the entire faculty of the school. So I really, really owe a lot, a great deal of gratitude to everyone. I'm also mindful of, the unfortunate kind of spread of the pandemic and the current wave that's going on in India. So I really hope that each and every one of you, your families, your loved ones, your friends, your colleagues, and your teams are all doing well. And I'm hoping and praying that, with the efforts that are going on in the country and with all the help that's coming from outside, I really hope and pray that we get out of this pandemic fairly soon. I'd like to keep this discussion, relatively, fairly open. As I said, I've had some network challenges as I just dialed into this meeting. So I think I've shut down my browser. So, I'm not sure whether I can see the Jamboard that we will get into in a minute, but Professor Sachdeva, I'm going to rely on you, kind of lean on you to tell me, what kind of responses we are getting, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, just a little background on the company that I have the privilege of leading. Milestone Technologies, we are an infrastructure services firm, globally headquartered here in the US. And we really focus on providing cutting-edge infrastructure solutions and the real focus that we have and the real difference that we believe we are able to provide to our clients is the leverage and the usage of automation and AI that we have in everything that we do. So, let's get to the presentation. Professor, you're gonna have the presentation live now.
So there is some network issue on your end. I could not hear you, the last sentence.
I was just saying, can we get the presentation on, please?
Yes, sir, sure. All right, sir. Is it visible?
Right. All right.
Yes.
Yes, I can see that. That's perfect. Right. So really, what I want to do was, just share some of my experiences. But before I get to my experiences, I'd love to, and again, this would have been so different had we been all in a room, right, in person. But if you go to the next chart, please. I'd like to start with a question as to, when you look at, when I kind of, again, as I said, I don't know how we're going to do this, but let's see, I really would like to understand and whether we can do it on the Jamboard. And Dr. Sachdeva, are people aware of the Jamboard that we have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I cannot see it, so I'm going to rely on you, Professor Sachdeva, to kind of tell me what folks are writing there. But would really, like for you to define, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when we talk about leadership, or maybe in a few words. Ideal would be one word, but in a few words, if you can define, when you think about leadership, what comes to your mind?
Students, you can jot down your views on the Jamboard.
All right. Students, the link has been shared. Please jot down your views on the Jamboard. I'm opening mine simultaneously.
Do we have some views on the Jamboard?
Dr. Ajay, could you just help in the same?
Yes, ma'am.
So please read out the views on the Jamboard. That will be
Confident, motivator, role model, risk taker, ethical, motivating people to act toward achieving a goal, direction, administration, role model, control, social, responsible, empath.
Interesting. Very good. Did you say
Authentic.
control? Did I hear control as well?
Yes, sir.
That's pretty interesting. I'd love to, understand the thought behind that, but we'll get to that, towards the end. But that's good, So I've randomly made some notes, role model, motivation, administration, risk taker, problem solver, responsible. Anything around empathy? I think Mr. Jaipuria was kind of referring to that earlier. Anything around the people aspect of what you define as leadership, empathy, inclusivity? Any comments there around those themes? Okay, all right. Let's go to the next chart. I just want to have I just have one more question for the audience, for the team. If we go to the next chart, please.
next slide, please.
So what do you think? Are leaders born or are leaders made? Let's get some views on the Jamboard again. And again, I'll rely on you, sir, to please tell me what students are writing.
Can we share the Jamboard on the screen also?
Actually, that would be ideal if you can.
The Jamboard result is not visible at my side.
On
So what's
second question, write down your views.
What are the responses that are coming in?
Most of them are answering both. Leaders are born and made, both.
Actually, this is a trick question. I did not give the option of both.
Leaders are made. So different views coming from different.
Someone
But where
saying
is the
that
mean?
1/3
Is the
born
mean?
and 2/3 made.
So 1/3 are saying born and 2/3 are saying both. Or made. Okay, interesting. Good. Okay, so we can move on again. I'd like to probably come back to this question maybe in some time. But so again, as my background earlier, you know, I had the opportunity of working for some absolutely world organizations. I started my career at Wipro. I say this all the time. I kind of grew up at Wipro. I worked in India for about 3 years, and then right after that. I moved to the US back in 1995. Oh, fantastic. I can see this now. Okay. 1/3 born, 2/3 made, carrying the legacy, train, learning. They are made, leaders are made, they're made. Role model, that's it.
We do have empathy
Fantastic.
also.
Fantastic. We have empathy. Okay.
We have empathy, though the Y is missing, but we have empathy.
Okay, we do have. Maybe I can see it. It's somewhere.
Wisdom and
Okay.
governance are also there. Courageous.
Sure. So you know, when I think about leadership, you know, to me, it really is a lot that I have imbibed, you know, over the years, working with some absolutely world-class managers. You know, I've had the privilege, I can say, you know, I've had the privilege of working for leaders and something, you know, not know them, you know, at Wipro, Vivek Paul at Wipro, Suresh Vaswani, Azim Premji, Achutan Nair, folks like Michael Dell, you know, when I was working at Dell, and many great leaders at Dell. I had the unique privilege of working very closely with Ginny Romeri at IBM. She was the last CEO general of the company. And a lot of these leaders and many more, you know, that I've had the opportunity working with, you know, I probably not worked very directly with them, but I've seen them over the years. And a lot of it, you know, when I get, it's kind of reflected in you know, what I when I say my leadership style. So my leadership style, I think, reflects a lot on, it draws upon really my learnings from my personal experiences. And I also see that, you know, when I was working my career, you know, working for these great managers, you know, what would energize me at that time, you know, looking at those managers, looking at the leaders at that time. And I think I've, over the years, you know, kind of that a lot of that has rubbed on to me as well. But I think at the end of the day, you know, one really has to find their authentic style and their approach to leadership. So let's go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to just share with you what I think are 5 very important leadership traits that I have written this. I practice a lot in everything that I do and everything that I've done in the last 2 years. So if you go to the next chart, please, we can go to the next chart now, which is the number 1 trait I'm going to talk about. And I'm having some difficulty here. Okay, let's see. That's right. So to me, you know, clarity is a very big trait, and you know, in terms of the leader. So it's about clarity in a lot of things. I think the first and foremost is, you know, you have a very compelling vision that you want to set for the organization. And I'm talking about my current role as a CEO. When I joined Milestone, you know, about 1.5 years back, one of the first things I told the board of directors was that, you know, I'll take about first 90 days in kind of meeting the customers, meeting the employees.
Sorry to interrupt you, Samir. Actually, the your voice is not very clear. If you can have your video off, let us try that, because it is not very audible. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's absolutely fine. Is that any better now?
Much better.
Much better.
Let's see if this works. Okay, all right. So my apologies again. I don't know why. it always happens when you're having the most important meeting, right? The network starts misbehaving. So my apologies. And I hope you can see me, or well, you can't see me, but I hope you can hear me okay with this. So I was talking about, when it comes to clarity, fantastic, very good, very good. So it's really about creating a very compelling vision and mission for the organization, winning aspiration. So it's really, as I said, when I came on board, I spent the first, my plan was to spend the first 90 days, touring the country, touring the world, meeting with the teams and meeting with customers, really understanding what we do well, what we don't do well, and then really kind of huddle with the management team and talk about, what the vision is, what our strategy is. But then, of course, within 2.5 months of me joining, the pandemic hit, and a lot of those plans kind of went out of the window. But to me, and then we did, I got my leadership team together on a virtual platform like Zoom. We spent a lot of time and we created this very unique, winning aspiration that I call it. So my objective has been that, whatever is the strategy of the company, whatever we are trying to do in terms of the vision, in terms of the mission, in terms of the winning aspiration, at the end of the day, that has to be crystal clear understanding between what that company objective is, what that company mission is, what that company vision is, and tying it to the each and every employee's objective and vision and what he or she wants to do. So very, very full clarity on the vision. So we spent roughly 20 hours on Zoom meetings doing that visioning exercise, and we came up with what we defined as a winning aspiration for Milestone. And then when we defined the winning aspiration for Milestone, we also said that, okay, fine, now we're going to define what are the 5 goals that we're going to set for ourselves. And again, I wanted to publish these goals to the rest of the organization, what those goals are, what is it that the management team will go after. And then once we defined the goals, we said, okay, fine, now let's be very, very clear in terms of how are we going to, where are we going to play the game, right? And to me, playing the game always has 3 components. It's the products or the service mix that you will have, is the geographies that you would operate in, or the countries that you would operate in, and the vertical industries that you would service. And then once you define, the area where you would play, then comes the 4th aspect of how will you win. So to me, having clarity in these 4 things, at the end of the day, once you define these 4 things, that's the strategy, right? So oftentimes, when I was doing my initial town hall meetings and meeting with smaller groups one-on-one basis as well, I would be asked that, hey, what is Milestone's strategy? And I think there was not much clarity at that time. So to me, clarity on the strategy is extremely important. Now, once you've clarified what the strategy is, what the mission is, what the vision is, what everyone is marching towards, then we got to make sure that there is solid alignment within the leadership team and the rest of the organization. And again, as I said, and I've seen this team in my experience over the years, amazing things happen when one is able to link one's personal objectives to the company objectives and the company strategy. So it's very, very important for my management team and myself to make sure that each and every person in the company, whatever level he or she is in, is A, very, very clear about what is expected from them. B, also is very, very clear about how what they're doing, how does that link to the overall company objectives and the company direction. The other thing which I think is very, very important when you talk about clarity is how you're going to win, right? So the 4th aspect of strategy that I talked about, after you've defined the winning aspiration, after you define the goals, after you've defined where you will play, and then the how part of how you will win. And for our business, we said it's got to be a go-to-market transformation, it's got to be a delivery operations transformation. Mergers and acquisitions is going to play a big role. So we define very clearly, how we're going to win in the marketplace over the next 4 years or so. So again, very strong on clarity. And then once you're talking about clarity, also you're going to make some, when you're talking about strategy, you're talking about vision, you're talking about the winning aspiration and the purpose of the company as well, right? Then the next step comes, okay, fine, what kind of culture you want to drive within the organization, right? You want to drive a winning culture? Do you want to drive a safe environment culture? Do you want to drive a fun environment culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And that's something that was the next step that we kind of worked on from a clarity perspective. That let's be very clear about within the organization what kind of culture do we want to drive, so that everyone, and then once you drive, decide the company culture, then comes the next next step of really defining what are the values that kind of bind us all together. So to me, clarity has been the number one kind of starting off point in terms of the 5 key things that I think a leader should have. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the second thing, again, based on my experience, it's great that you've got now full clarity on the vision. You've got full clarity on what you want to drive on the strategy. Then comes the execution part, right? So complete decisiveness in execution. Ruthless execution is what I remember some of my previous bosses would say. And again, I don't know who said this. I think maybe Edison or someone said it. Strategy without execution is a hallucination. You can have the best of strategies, you can have the best of plans, you can have the best of winning aspirations and mission and vision and so on, but if you don't execute, it is just a PowerPoint. It is just a piece of paper. So I think the courage to commit, I think, is extremely, extremely important. And I think, it's the courage to commit and then the courage to stay laser focused on the mission and the goal, right? Because again, I've seen, and I'll kind of talk about this in some time, the curveball that kind of got thrown at us, whatever, February, March of last year on this pandemic, I think that has, kind of disrupted a lot of industries, disrupted a lot of lives on a personal basis as well. But again, what I've seen is, when I say stay laser focused on the mission, stay laser focused on the goal, but with the flexibility of adapting and pivoting if you have to. And I'll give you an example of, what we did when COVID hit us, right? Everyone, at least here in the Silicon Valley in California, which is where, we work out of, we've had this model of working from home, maybe 1 day a week, 1 day in, 2 weeks, people would work from home, et cetera, et cetera. And then when the pandemic hit, when the stay-at-home orders came, suddenly there was this, big shift around, okay, fine, how are we going to support our customers? How are we going to support, our employees in a remote model, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things which we had focused on in terms of, the strategy, we had to pivot because there were these curveballs. So my point is stay laser focused on the mission, stay laser focused on the goal, but have the flexibility of pivoting if you have to pivot. Because the only thing, and again, it's a cliche that I'm going to say it now, but the only thing that I have seen in my life which is constant is change. So the decisiveness and execution from my perspective is, don't fear the change. Stay focused on your commitment, stay focused on your mission, stay focused on your strategy. But again, pivot if you have to. Now, also, I think it's very, very important, and it's a life lesson that I've learned that, listen, not everything is going to go right. Not everything's going to go right. And we've seen that. I've seen it in all my lives, right? We come up with 10 different things we're going to do this year. 7 of those things pan out very well. 3 of the things just don't pan out at all. But I think what is important, and I've learned this again, learning from kind of seeing all these fantastic leaders that I've had the privilege of working for, what matters is not that your things are not going to work out. I think what matters is how do we react when things don't work out? How do we respond when things don't work out, right? And again, to a leader, and I'll talk about this in a moment again, as to why that is important, because the curveballs will get thrown at us, right? Those spin balls will keep coming at us. And the question is, how do we react and how do we respond? And another thing which I think is very, very important when I look at, my perspective, from my perspective, I think the velocity of execution, the velocity of decision making, the empowerment that we are giving to the team. So as a leader of the organization, I know I got to do a lot of things, but then this is a team sport, right? I cannot alone run this company. I've got to rely on my management team. My management team is going to rely on their management team. And at the end of the day, it's a team sport. And, I think someone said it takes a village, to raise a child in a different context, right? But if you think about an organization, in my mind, it needs a village to run and grow an organization. So I think empowerment, becomes very, very important. I think the other thing also when it comes to execution is that the ability of a leader to listen, I think is very, very important. We all, and again, kind of life experience I'm sharing, it doesn't matter how much you know as a leader. It doesn't matter how much you know as someone who's managing a team. I think what really matters is how much you listen, right? Because, and again, I'll talk about this in a moment, but decide. So you've got the clarity, you've clarified very clearly what you expect from the organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now the next step is, the second step in my mind is go ahead and execute. Let's go to the third one, please. The next slide. So authentic passion, two very, very nice words. I love these two words, right? Authentic passion. And so what do when people see passion, right? And again, I'll go back to, maybe 20 years back, 30 years back, a younger, myself, sitting in those sessions, early meetings in Wipro in Bombay or in Bangalore or wherever. And when I would see, those leaders come and talk very passionately, what is it that I would see in that passion? I would see commitment. I would see that desire to win. I would see that mindset, and again, I'll say this, there is a very interesting concept. Mr. Premji, kind of once told me that there is a big difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. The outcome in both may be the same, well, maybe may not be, but your approach to the game completely changes between the two models or between the two states of mind, right? When you're playing to win, you're going to be aggressive. You're going to be, you're going to take a risk. You're going to do things which are outside of your control or, well, not control, outside of your comfort zone. But when you're playing not to lose, you're going to be defensive. You're not going to take risks, et cetera, et cetera. So when I see passion, and again, I've seen this, right? When people are playing to win, there is a little different bit of passion that comes out versus when people are playing not to lose. So when I see passion, I see commitment, I see a desire to win, I see a desire to be successful. And that really, kind of translates into what is a mindset that you want to drive within the organization, which is, are you going to play to win or are you going to play not to lose? I think the key, again, when you talk about running an organization within or a team, whether it's a 10 people team or a 200 people team or a 3,000 people organization, or what Mr. Shishir Jaipuria is running in a very grand organization, very large scale. I think the key trait of leadership is the ability to influence and inspire. And I think the ability to influence and inspire will only come if the teams, if the people see that authentic passion coming. And when I say authentic passion, right, I mean, and I look at myself, right, and again, I'm probably going to say this 200 times more. I feel so privileged, to kind of get the kind of opportunities that I've gotten in my career so far, right? And when you love, and I've seen this, right? When you love what you do, it shows. When you're passionate about what you do, it shows. When you wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, this is another fantastic day. Let's go make a change. Let's go do this. Let's go win for the team. I think that energy, that enthusiasm becomes extremely, extremely contagious. So as a leader, show that energy. As a leader, show that enthusiasm. At the same time, a leader is, again, human, right? So show that side as well. Show the humility. I think the notion of, I don't have all the answers. I know I'm going to be wrong certain times, but I'm going to take a decision today based on the information that I have, based on the data that I have, and that gut feel that I have. I'm going to take a decision, but admit when you're wrong. I think that humility is very, very important. And again, at the end of the day, when I look at the industry that I work in, right, it's services industry, IT services. It's all about people. It's all about people. It's all about how much trust you're able to generate in the people that you're working with. When I talk about authentic passion, I also, include in that the ability to realize that, when I said before, right, that I may not have all the right answers, but I'm going to surround myself with people who are perhaps smarter than me in their respective areas and who will help me get to the right answers if I don't have the right answers. At the end of the day, the buck stops at me as a leader. The buck stops at me as a CEO of this company. So I'm going to take those decisions, but I'm going to rely on a team, and I'm going to be open enough. I'm going to show my human side, saying that, listen, guys, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to rely on each and every one of you. So I think that's the other thing. The other thing about authentic passion also in my mind is that, keep learning and innovating. And I always, when I came on board here and I had my first few meetings with my management team, I said, listen, folks, one of the things I'd like for you to do is to keep challenging me a lot of times. right? Because when you have the debate, when you have a different set of thinking coming, when you have the different set of challenges coming to your thinking, that's when real innovation happens. So again, I'm kind of putting all of this under passion, but I think to me it's extremely important. I think the other thing, when you talk about passion, is when you know what you do, what impact it has on other people. So I'll give you an example. At Milestone, we have the privilege of working for Facebook, and we manage Facebook's global data centers, in EMEA and in North America. And these are, I mean, as you understand IT, right? The entire platform of Facebook, of Instagram, of WhatsApp, everything runs on IT, right? It runs on servers, it runs on networks, it runs on that. We have the responsibility of managing those networks. We have the responsibility of managing those servers. So I often tell this to our teams, that folks, think about the impact that you have, the impact that you're bringing in by what you're doing day in, day out, to not just Facebook, but those hundreds of millions of users who use Facebook. And more importantly, think about the impact that those people will have if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Imagine, server is down. Yeah, okay, fine. We'll look at it in 2 hours, and boom, there's a big outage, right? So I think realizing what we do and how it impacts, our customer's customer, I think that is something that, truly energizes me. And again, as I say, from my perspective, when I see passion, as I'm recruiting, senior management in my, in the organization, and if I see passion in them, to me, that's the most important thing, or one of the most important things. So, all right, enough on passion. Now let's go to the next chart, please. I think the fourth one really is, so you've got passion, you've got clarity, you've got the decisiveness, in terms of execution. You got to communicate. You got to communicate the vision. You've set a fantastic grand vision. You've set the mission of the organization. You've set up the values of the organization. Communicate. And I cannot tell you enough about, the things that we have done at Milestone, especially over the last 14 months or so, or 15 months of the pandemic. The communication across the organization has just gone, I would say, 50 times than what we were doing, pre-pandemic. And this communication is across all levels, right? And again, go back to what I was saying before, right? If you're able to draw that line or that connection between the company objectives and the individual's objectives in an organization, and if you go back on a regular basis and tell them, communicate to them, where are we in the execution of our strategy? Where are we in the execution of our goals? Where are we in the execution of the mission that we set for the company? And this is how you, Mr. A, Mr. B, Ms. C, this is how you are contributing to that. So that whole communication, of where we stand in the execution of the strategy, I think you make them part of the journey. They become part of the journey. They continue to link their personal objectives to company objectives and strategy. I think, also linked to communication in my mind is breaking the department walls down. I've really tried, and again, it's been a little bit, challenging given COVID, et cetera, because you're not meeting people in person, right? Everything is happening virtual, like we're meeting today. But how do you make sure that the departments, the various groups within the organization are really talking to each other? I'll give you an example. When the pandemic hit, I remember March 18th, we in California, the governor announced stay-at-home orders. And I, did my staff meeting that evening, and I said, listen, I'm going to reach out to each and every person in the company. And at that point of time, we were roughly about 2,000 people. Over the next 6 weeks, I made a personal call to each and every of those 2,000 people. And to me, it was a very simple decision. The thing in my mind was, there is so much uncertainty. We've never seen anything like this before. We don't even know. By the way, at that time, I personally thought, yes, the government has announced a 2-week shutdown. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, we'll be back in the offices in 3 weeks. No one knew the extent of this, right? And I made sure that as we started to see, no, this is going to be longer term. And then schools have shut down, right? And again, in an environment where your employees, both the spouses are working, right? The kids need to go to the school. Who's going to take care of this, kids? It's not a joint family environment, at least in the US, right? So much of personal impact for each and every employee in the company. And I said, it will take me time,
but I'm going to make a personal phone call to each and every of these 2,000 employees. And I did that. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because it just broke down those walls between me and that one individual when he and we were on the phone for about 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And then I made sure that, we are kind of all the managers, and then it's percolating down, percolating down, percolating down. I think the other thing that we also did, as a part of our response to the pandemic was really, how do we now make sure you're not going to meet the people in the office? There's no going to the office, right? How do we make sure that we are still having those social connections, right? So a number of initiatives we launched, right? And again, from a communication standpoint, what I want to share is we saw our employee engagement score. So we do an employee engagement survey every year in December. When we did the employee engagement survey in December of last year, I was a little bit worried. I said, you know what, we're not going to get good scores. But then the reality is the reality. Whatever it is, we will get to see the reality. I was so surprised pleasantly that our engagement scores in 2020 were at least 10 points above than 2019. And today when I see, and I go to the Glassdoor, I see a lot of those, kind of ratings on the organization, where we were at the start of the pandemic and where we are today is a huge improvement. And I seriously owe it to that communication and really flowing down, from the top. So again, comes back to a lot of things, right? Comes back to clarity of expectations. I expect, that one-on-one conversation to happen at a manager level with each of his or her, team members, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, impactful communication, meaningful communication is a very, very important thing that I think a leader should drive. Okay, let's go to the next slide, I think, which is my fifth element of what I think is a strong trait for a leader is inclusivity. And this to me personally is a very, very important, and I'll talk about, what I mean by inclusivity, right? So when I look at, and I've had this privilege of, working in India, working in the US, working for a India headquartered company like Wipro, and then working for global organizations like Dell and IBM and now, Milestone. And when you look at our society as well, right, there are people with different life experiences, right? There are people with different backgrounds. There are people with different thought processes. There are people with different upbringings, different views, different cultures, which brings a different set of thoughts, right? And that to me truly, and again, this is something that I saw so much, when I was at Dell, and I saw this Michael Dell driving this himself about inclusivity. So to me, diversity, to me, equity, to me, inclusion in the leader is a very, very key trait. Because at the end of the day, when I look at the organization, or at least the industry, as I said, that I'm in, right, this is people industry. This is all services industry. If you're not going to respect people, if you're not going to make sure that you have an organization wherein it's safe for people to talk about their views. And again, you just go back to the turbulence that we saw last year and somewhere in this country, in the US here, right? And I don't know how many of you followed, what happened, the unfortunate killing of George Floyd and the racial, kind of issues that it brought to the fore. Now, these issues, in my personal opinion, I don't want to be political, in my personal opinion, US has seen this racial issues for the last 300, 400 years, right? So it's nothing new. But to me, that was I said, for the first time, I'm in a position wherein I can drive a change within the organization, or I can push for certain things within the organization. And since then, diversity, equity, inclusion became a cornerstone of the values of Milestone. So to me, again, how do you make sure that people, again, when you talk about millennials, right? And I guess I'm talking to a set of millennials as well, right? And again, it would have been so nice to kind of see a raise of hands in the room if we were together. But to a lot of people, it is about human values. To a lot of people, it has to be about, the respect for the individual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So create an organization. And again, at the end of the day, and I say this all the time, we all have biases. again, go back to what I said early on, different life experiences, different backgrounds, different thought processes, different views, different cultures. We all have implicit and explicit biases. How do you eliminate those implicit and explicit biases? And in fact, just today's what, Friday, Wednesday, we had a discussion internally in the company. You know, we have these employee resource groups, and one of our employee resource groups is the LGBTIQ plus, the lesbians, the trans and gay, folks. So the question was, how do you become an ally, and how do people in position, right? And I look at myself as the title that I have. I think I'm in a position of leadership. How do I make sure that I drive that behavior personally, and how does the leadership within the organization make sure that we drive that behavior, which really says that, listen, human values are important, different thoughts and different backgrounds are important, et cetera, et cetera. So I think inclusivity to me is again a very, very important trait. All right, now we go to, I think I had just one or two more slides. I just want to talk about, I wouldn't say synthesis, but some clear observations, some experiences that I've seen, especially in the last 12, 14 months of the pandemic. I call this my kind of top 10 observations or top 10 learnings. So if you go to the next chart, please. And again, this is in the context of leadership. So we can do the first click. So let's see the first bullet over there. I think, and again, I think the average age of the students is like 22, 23. So if I talk about anything prior to maybe 2000, people may not even remember, or people perhaps were not even born at that time. No, just hang on to that, please. The reality is, right, we have all seen challenges before, right? Yes, different challenges. We've all been pressure tested before. We've all, at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, emerge stronger. All crises, no, again, I don't know how many of you remember in terms of the students, right? The 2000, .com bust, right? That we had in the US, right? And I'm going to talk about mostly from a US perspective, given that I've spent the last almost 30 years of my life in the US, 25, 26 years. The 9/11 crisis that we had in the US, the 2007 global financial crisis, which kind of, the housing market collapse, the financial markets collapse, and kind of impacted the entire, world and the entire, economy around the world. And then, of course, the unprecedented crisis that none of us had seen in our lifetime so far, right, or till now, the COVID crisis. But again, my view is, as a leader, I think you've got to be cognizant of the fact that today it's COVID-19, tomorrow it could be something else. The reality of the game is that, there will be curveballs thrown at us. There will be crises. So keep that at the back of your mind, and yes, the journey and the process of, when you're in the crisis and when you come out of the crisis, that journey is very, very painful, both on professional levels and personal levels. But keep in mind that this too shall pass. I think that's very, very important. Let's go to the next bullet, please. Answer the call. All crises demand true leadership. Take charge. Stare at the uncertainty. So accept the upcoming change. You don't know, you may not know what the change may look like tomorrow, day after, but take that change, accept that change. See, when crisis happens, right, people are looking at you as a leader. Everyone is watching you. Because a lot of times people are scared. People don't know what's going to happen. People don't know what's going to happen to their personal lives. So take charge of that. Answer the call of leadership. Take the decisive actions that you need to take. Let's go to the next one, please. Don't minimize the crisis. The crisis is real, right? And again, I don't want to be political, but what we saw when COVID-19 broke here in the US in March of last year, and pretty much all of last year, the And again, I don't wish to be political at all, but if you look at the narrative in the US at that time was from the political leadership that listen, it's just going to go away. It's a regular flu. Whereas I think everyone knew it's not going to go away. It's going to be a very deadly, disease and deadly pandemic. So don't minimize the crisis because people realize, they may not realize at that point of time, but 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line, whatever time the crisis is running, at the end of it, people will realize. So get out in front of the crisis. And words matter. The timing of the words matter. The timing of the action matters. The velocity of the actions matter. And I think in all of this, when you're out in front, you're visible within the organization. And just imagine, and again, I can only, and I would love to get Mr. Shishir Jaipuria's views as well, because he's running a bigger organization. And how do you become more visible when you're not together, right, in the same office with the people, especially last 14, 15 months? So this notion of, oh no, it's just going to go away, or this crisis, whether it's the housing crisis, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's, whatever, it's going to go. Yes, it will go away, but don't minimize the crisis. Let's go to the next one. So this is what I was just saying, right? People don't know the answers. When you look at the organization, there are all levels of, talent that you have within the organization. And generally, people do not have clarity. People are confused. And that's where they need guidance. That's where they need clarity. That's where they need hope. That's where they need that optimism, in my mind. So again, what we did, increase communication at all levels. We used to do, before I showed up here, at Milestone, we would do a town hall or an all hands meeting every quarter. And we said, when the pandemic hit, I said, I'm going to do a town hall, or we as a management team, we will do a town hall every 6 weeks. And we're going to get the organization together every 6 weeks, the entire organization, virtually, and we will talk about what's happening, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we started doing was, and we're doing it even till now, and we started on 18th of March last year. Today is 21st of May over here, 22nd in India. Every day we have run a 15-minute call in the morning, a global call. It's my direct reports and about 10 different managers. About 20 of us get together every working day to look at where are the new cases, how are our teams doing, what's happening in India, what's our response. So I think this whole thing around people don't know the answers, they're looking for guidance. And in those meetings, in those daily calls that we've been having since 18th of March of last year till today, 21st of May over here, more than a year later, that the objective of those calls, among other things, is of course to figure out what's happening in the company, how our people are doing, but to find those answers for our teams. Let's go to the next bullet, please. And I think I'm taking a lot of time, so I'm gonna quickly kind of pick up the speed here. I just realized we're probably running out of time. Never sugarcoat bad news. Never sugarcoat bad news. Bad news is bad news, but not telling the full truth, then you lose your credibility. Yes, pandemic is bad, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to pull through this. But we've got this thing going on. We've got this. Talk about your plan to address the problem. Don't sugarcoat bad news. To me, I think that's the disaster thing a leader can do, because sooner or later, the truth is going to come out. And when the truth comes out, and when people look at that, people will say, you know what? You told us it's not this bad, it's not this bad, it's not this bad. It turned out to be so bad. Then you lose your credibility. Next one, please. Make things simple, especially in terms of crisis, right? Break them into, so we had these quarterly goals, we had every 6-month goals. Very quickly, we pivoted to weekly goals. And I'm talking about, whether it was sales, whether it was employee engagement, whether it was, the benefits that we were providing to our teams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So break down your lofty goals, because now you just don't have the time to execute on that, right? So you got to break it down into simple micro actions and micro goals. Next button, please. I keep thinking now, next beyond. Our first, when we did the first staff meeting, on the evening of March 18th, I told our CFO, what's our cash position? How do we preserve cash? How do we preserve liquidity? Tomorrow morning, let's draw the maximum that we can draw from the banks in terms of the line of credit that we have. So you think about now, you think about all the bad things that could happen. And then over the next 2 days, we worked out 4 different scenarios of what will happen if we lose 50% of our, we actually went down to 25%. What if we lose 75% of our revenue? What if we lose 50% of our revenue? What if we lose, we went down to 25% of our revenue? What impact will it have on the business? What cost actions we should take? So we are ready with different scenarios. So think about now, think about next, think about beyond. We said, you know what? We're going to stop some of the initiatives that we have in the company because we just don't have the money to spend, and we want to preserve cash at this stage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go to the next one, please. I think this is what we did. We said, listen, this will pass. Now, of course, no one realized, none of us, that, this is going to take so long. But we said, this too shall pass, and let's start planning for the next phase. So we became very, very acquisitive. We started very aggressive on our M&A plan. And we did, in the history of the company, we did our very first acquisition in December of last year. And this was a 400 people company that we acquired. And trust me, no in-person meetings. We did everything on Zoom. So go aggressive, start planning while you're figuring out your cash liquidity position today. Start thinking about what you're going to do, how you're going to counter, kind of offense in terms of, when the dust settles. Next one, please. I don't know what I should say on this. We all know confidence is contagious, right? You demonstrate that confidence, you demonstrate that realism, you demonstrate that humility, you demonstrate that, listen, team, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that we have seen similar things in the past. We're going to go past this. We are going to look at this. We are going to pivot if we have to. I think that confidence from a leader and the lack of confidence in a leader is contagious as well. Next one, please. I think this is very, very important, right? We're all running, especially in the last 14, 16 months, all of us have been running at, 100 miles an hour or driving the car 100 miles an hour at the same time trying to change the wheel or the tire. You got to take downtime. You got to take care of your health. One thing that I say all the time, and I say this to our customers, our number one priority is our people. Our number one priority is our people. And for our people, our number one priority is their health and safety. And the health and safety, not just physical, but mental health and safety as well. So this notion of downtime, find time to relax. I tell my management team, yes, in the last 1.5 years, we've not been able to fly anywhere or travel anywhere, but please take some time off. Disconnect. We all need that downtime. All right, I think I've completely blown out my time allotted. I think we are way over time. So I'm gonna pause here now. And if you can go back to the question, go to the next slide, please. I'd like to just quickly see if there is any change in people's thinking about the answers that they gave before. So maybe a minute or minute and a half, if you can take on the Jamboard, please. And again, I'll request Dr. Ashwini for your, kind of readout of what people are writing there.
Ajay sir, if possible, please share the Jamboard screen.
Any changes? Anything new? So the trick question was really, when I said are leaders born or made, the trick question was that I did not give you the choice of both. Again, in my mind, I think a leader is born. I think a leader develops skills. I think a leader develops skills, all kinds of skills, whether it's in, communication, emotional skills, the integrity skills, et cetera, and kind of grows them and cultivates them through life experiences. So to me, when I look at myself, it's like, any sports person, right? For example, right? Sachin Tendulkar, probably he was born with some stuff, right? Or, well, again, probably I'm aging myself. I probably should have said some of the new players, but you know what I mean, right? So some people, there are certain things you're born with, and then there are certain things you develop. So to me, in my mind, I think a leader is both born and made. It's a combination of the two. So let me just pause there. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'll give it back to you, Professor Sanandi, or Dr. Ashwini for the next kind of where we go from here.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sharing your valuable inputs. It's really very encouraging for all of us. In fact, there are a lot of interesting questions that are coming up from the student side. Let us take these questions and your take views on those questions. Like you have mentioned that ability to inspire others is the key element of leadership. So part one is, who do you look up to for inspiration? And part two is, in these turbulent times, how you inspire your team being a CEO of Milestone. Your view, sir.
So so there are so many people I derive or get my inspiration from. So many people, right? It's not just, you know, the names that I mentioned before, but it's you know, that relatively junior employee who's just joined our company, and I see that passion in that person, that inspires me. When I see that, you know, that thing in people's mind about, listen, I know it's going to take me 3 hours, but I got to get this thing done, because if I don't do it, my customer's work is going to get impacted. I derive so much inspiration from that. So it's, to me, it's like, you know, around when I look around myself, I find so many interesting, so many compelling, you know, reasons for me to derive inspiration from. So many people is what I would say. Of course, I do a lot of reading whenever I get some time. You know, I have this thing about buying a lot of books, but my problem is I buy a lot of books, but I don't end up, you know, kind of finishing many of those books. I have this grand vision in my mind that, you know, one day when I retire, I'm going to have this big library in my house, and I'm going to start reading all the books that I've bought. But to me, inspiration comes from everyone around me. There was a second part of that question, Dr. Varshney, right?
Right. Any strategy that you have taken for inspiring others during these turbulent times?
No, I think it's just my belief that, you know, and this is very specific to Milestone, right? What solutions we have for our customers. And, you know, all of our clients are tech companies, right? So the Facebooks, the Googles, the PayPals, you know, the Ubers of the world, Workday. So these are all tech companies. And I think one of the things that we've seen in this pandemic is the leverage of tech has gone up, or the usage of tech has really gone up. And I truly believe we've got that secret sauce within Milestone that we are able to offer to our customers that continue to, you know, get value from us. So I truly inherently feel very confident, very bullish about what we have, how we are approaching the market, how we are approaching our customers. And more than anything else, how do we take care of our employees? I think that gives me a huge amount of confidence. And again, as I said, right, I think confidence is contagious. And when I talk to my teams in those, in fact, just next week, we have our, you know, next set of all hands coming up. And I truly get very, very excited. So I think it's just that, you know, I truly see, you know, the value that we're able to, you know, and how we're able to solve problems for our customers, and how we're able to provide an opportunity to our employees for their personal growth and their family growth as well. I think just you know, gives me a lot of confidence, and I think that just shows, you know, in whatever I say and whatever I do.
Right. So you have, sir, like you have mentioned the 5 key traits of leadership. So which trait, according to you, is really important in these turbulent times?
I think all of these traits are equally important, right? It is very, so first, initially I thought, should I talk about 3 traits? Can I boil it down to 3? Do I have enough to, you know, kind of say there are 7 traits? And I said, maybe 5 is the right number. I think, you know, whatever I said in terms of the clarity, whether it's, you know, in terms of decisiveness, execution, passion, communication, inclusivity, I think these are all, you know, very, very important. Each one of them has its own, you know, kind of weightage in my mind, if you will. But I wouldn't say, you know, I wouldn't pick any one. But I would say just all of these 5 is not, and one drives the other, right? You cannot, you know, kind of be successful by just having one trait, right? In my opinion, it's all these 5 which are, you know, extremely important.
Okay.
And I got switched on my video, so maybe I'm not coming through right, so I'm going to stop it now.
Okay.
Okay. Were you able to hear that?
Yeah,
okay.
little bit disturbance.
There was little disturbance in there.
Okay.
Now it's okay.
Now
Now it is better.
Sure. No, I kind of switched on the video for some time. I thought maybe it's working fine, but then I switched it off again.
Yeah. So, sir, can we move on to the next question? A lot of interesting questions students are asking. In fact,
Sure.
so what were your key learnings in this disruptive situation as a CEO of a Milestone?
So again, my key learnings were those top 10 things that I talked about, right? In terms of get out in the front, it's going to be, you will not have the answers. So if you go back to that chart that I had, my kind of top 10 observations, and especially in light of the pandemic, I think those are real. And I always talk about, so it's interesting, I must say this, we had, after 14 months of not being in the office, I just did 2 weeks back an offsite with my leadership team, because all of us got vaccinated. And we've gone through that process of 2 weeks after the second shot and so on. So we actually met and we talked about this aspect of leadership and what we've been doing, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, it's all about, those top 10, those are the top 10 kind of learnings that I've had, especially in the last 14 months.
Okay. So there is another question, like there is a new version of leadership, soul-centered leadership, that is basically promoted by Michael Anderson. So what are your thoughts on merging spirituality with business leadership?
I've never heard that before, so that's a very interesting thought.
Merging the spirituality part with the business leadership.
I actually don't have an answer around that. It's a very interesting thought. I am not by nature, I'm not a very spiritual person, but I guess everyone has some element of spirituality in them. And there are different meanings of spirituality as well. But actually, whoever has asked that question would love to have a conversation with him or her.
Harshita Kashyap have asked.
Who's that?
Harshita Kashyap.
Harshita, would love to, set up a follow-on conversation to, kind of get your views as well on this topic.
Is it possible, Ajay sir? Ajay sir?
But we can, Harshita, feel free to reach out to me. You can, I can,
Anyway, sir.
I will share my, I think some of you have my email ID. So that's my personal email ID. You can share it with Harshita, and, she and I, we can find some time to talk.
you can do that, sir.
So moving on to the next question. This turbulence can come about as a result of both external and internal factors. There are a lot of challenges that the leaders are facing these days, internally as well as externally, right? So Abhishek wants to know from you, how do leaders find the time and space to think in these tough times, to cope up with these internal factors and to cope up with the external factors?
You don't sleep. No, I'm just joking. Just talking about that. I know. So I was and this is, when I was at IBM, I took part in a conference in London, and I was asked this question that, hey, Samir, what keeps you up at night? And I kind of looked at that person, the reporter, and I said, I actually sleep very well in the nights. I'm not up in the nights. No, but seriously, on a serious note, I think that's part of the job. A lot of times, and if you look at my calendar, my assistant who kind of manages my calendar, she knows that she's got to keep some blocks of time every day. Throughout the day, I have all put together 2 hours of block time. And that's the time when that's my time, right? I mean, oftentimes, of course, I get pulled into customer meetings. I love those discussions. I get, spend time with our employees, but I need to spend some time with myself as well, which is where I kind of do a lot of introspection, which is where I do a lot of reading, which is where I kind of think about, how can we do things differently, et cetera, et cetera. So as a leader, I think we have to find that time. And as a leader, and I'll share this with you as well, people are watching, as I said before, right? As leaders, whatever we do, whatever actions we take, whatever actions we do not take, people are watching us all the time. I have this golden rule that if I get an email over the weekend, I will not reply to it. Because when I reply to an email over the weekend, I'm kind of telling the organization, this is just my personal thing, I'm kind of telling the organization that I expect you guys now to respond to this email as well. And that's not what I want. I want the weekends to be family time. I want the weekends to be personal time. If someone wants to call me and have a conversation, I'll very gladly have a conversation. But I do not send anything out from my side. I will do my work over the weekend. I'll respond to all the emails, but I'm going to queue them up so that they get sent out on Sunday evening, late in the night. So I think it's about taking that responsibility and finding really that time and space to think. Whether it's tough times or whether it's easy times.
Interesting. In fact, one of our student, Gul Fashan, she is asking about how would you describe your leadership style?
I don't know. I think that's something that you should ask my folks whom I have the privilege of leading in the
Like
organization.
any compliment you get from your colleagues.
See, I think when I look at how we are growing the organization, and forget for a moment, of course, we all have business goals, right? We want to grow the organization, we want to drive revenue, we're going to drive profitability. But at the end of the day, when I see our employees are growing, when I see the engagement index of our employees going up, when I see that 94% of them say that they see themselves in this organization 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, that tells me that whatever we are doing as a leadership team, I think that is working well. When I look at our customers, telling us that, listen, we really like the approach that Milestone has, which is we're going to take care of it. And I truly say this, right? And I say this to our employees all the time. We are in business because we have customers, but we have customers because we have our teams. So if we take care of our employees, and to me, again, there is a book, a very interesting book written by the ex-CEO of HCL. I'm going completely blank on his name. I don't know how I can go blank on his name. He's such a renowned guy. He wrote a book about 10 years or maybe 15 years back, which says employees first and customers second. Okay. And at that time, when he wrote that book, it was a pretty controversial book. How can you say customers are second, customers are always first? And I truly believe in that philosophy. You take care of your employees will take care of the customers. So yeah, to me, I think the result or the kind of barometer of success is when I see our employees thriving and when I see our customers thriving as well.
Okay. So whenever you have a disagreement or difference of opinion with your team, how do you tackle those differences, those disagreement with your team members?
It's a very good question. And that's, I'm glad, someone's asked that question. 91857 is asking that question. I see that on the chat. I want disagreements. I want differences of opinion because I think I said this before, right? I think that's the only way you can really have innovation. So I actually, will make in my staff meetings or whatever meetings that we are doing, right? I will say that, listen, team, I'm going to be a little bit provocative here. And I'm gonna say something provocative in terms of strategy, in terms of certain decisions we are taking, and I want people to critique it. I want people to have honest debates about it. I want people to have, to share their views. Because again, go back to what the trait number 5 I said, right? Inclusivity. We all come with different experiences. We all have different ideas. We all have different thoughts. We've all been, very successful in our respective careers, right? So let's have that healthy debate. But I have one ground rule, Dr. Varshney. My ground rule to my leadership team is that we will have debates, we will have disagreements, we'll have differences of opinion. But once we take a decision, everyone falls behind that decision. Perfect. Because you cannot have disagreement within the management team. Because that disagreement in your mind will get translated in your action with your teams. And when the team sees that there is disagreement in the management team, it's a pretty bad situation. So my, kind of expectations, and this is something that I shared with the team when I came first on board over here, in one of my early staff meetings, was that I do want disagreement. I do want differences of opinion. I do want people to challenge me or whoever else within the room. But once we decide, and at the end of the day, sometimes I do pull the CEO prerogative, right? It's going to be my decision, right? But as long as you're giving the opportunity to your leaders to hear them out, to get their point of view, And I've seen this, right? When you do that, even if you take a decision which is not what they were saying, I think people are generally fine with that because you've heard them out, you've given them the opportunity to voice their opinion. But at the end of the day, there is no agreement within the team. I, as the leader of the team, I have to take a decision. I have to take a call. So that's the way we do it.
Okay, perfect. So, recently at the institute level, we have established the Institution Innovation Council.
Mhm.
In that council, there are a lot of students. They are starting up their own ventures, and they are doing mini projects for developing them into commercial projects. So,
Mhm.
what's your suggestion to these new startups flourishing these days? Any
So,
message to those students from your
no,
side?
I think 2-3 things I would say. Personally, I've really not been in a kind of that startup mode in my career. But when I think about some of the things that I've done in larger organizations, right, they've been kind of startup divisions of startup businesses in a lot of ways. So I think it's all about, again, I go back to my 5 points, right? You have the passion, right? Drive that passion, right? Make people see that passion. And when you have passion, you're going to think about what extra do I need to do to make this successful? Now, of course, there will be curveballs, as we've talked about in the last 1.5 hours, right? There will be obstacles that will come your way. But I think the sheer determination of saying that, listen, if I truly believe in this, I'm going to go push this as well. So I think that's one part of it. The other part of it is also, as I said, right? You got to think a little bit. How should I say this? You got to think a little bit crazy, but at the same time be grounded in reality as well. And a lot of people would say that, oh no, go completely crazy, follow your dreams, etc. So I'm full for that. But at the end of the day, you got to decide, how to balance that in your mind, right? So to me, you have passion for doing something, go after it. The other big thing, never in my, if I look back at my career, right, very seldom I've had answers to all the questions that I've had. You will never get the best set of data. You will never get the best set of information. You will get a set of data. You will get a set of information. A, you will have to drive insights from it. And B, it may not be enough for you to take that decision. So you will have to go on your gut. Oftentimes I've done that. Luckily for me, most of the times it has worked out for me. Only a few times it has not worked out. But I think you got to go with your gut a lot of times. But don't ignore the data. Don't ignore the information. So.
Okay, perfect.
Sir, when you have thought that you have to start a company, and what the market survey or during that time the market trend you analyzed, so or what are the aspects you have looked into before starting of your company, that might be giving some idea to our students who are actually thinking about starting of their own venture.
Sure. So I must clarify this. So I did not start Milestone. I, joined Milestone as the CEO. Milestone has been in business for about 23 years. And there was another gentleman who was the CEO before. And so I did not start Milestone. But to me, the most important thing, whether you're starting your own, kind of company or what, you got to define what is it that you want to achieve. So it goes back to, that what's your vision, what's your mission, what is the winning proposition that you have, right? So we defined, that we want to be a global managed services company, helping our clients in their digital and IT transformation by reimagining people-based technology solutions and doing all of this in an environment wherein our stakeholders, which is our people, our customers, and our partners thrive. So you gotta, anything to me starts with what is it that you want to achieve, and then have measurable goals around that. And then again, if you go back to what I was talking about in terms of our strategy, right? So the thing that we did, we rolled out what I call a strategy 2023. It's a 4-year strategic vision that we created for the organization last year. And to me, it has 4 key components, right? It has a winning aspiration, it has the goals. So we defined 5 goals, 2 goals around financials, 1 goal around customer satisfaction or net promoter score, 1 goal around employee satisfaction, and the 5th goal around some industry recognition, from the industry analysts and so on. Then we defined where are we going to play, right? So which is products and services, the geographies that we want to be in, the industry verticals that we want to go after. And then we defined 5 areas of how we will win, which was around, go-to-market transformation. So where do we want to hunt? How do we want to hunt? How do we want to grow our existing clients? What marketing, kind of strategy do we need to have in place? How are we going to continuously drive innovation in our company? So that's all operations transformation. How are we going to continue, the journey of continuous improvement? Of course, a big part of our strategy has been, acquisitions. So we are very, very acquisitive. We've again defined the kind of companies that we want to acquire, the kind of, profile of those companies. We've defined how we will drive people engagement in the organization. Because again, as I said, right, people, number one asset of the company, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, it's about, what's the business case, what's the vision, and then you create that business case, and then you have a very, very compelling passion, right, around driving that vision to reality. And surround yourself with smarter people. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. I think that's the other thing, which is so important from a leadership standpoint, that recognition that I'm not the smartest person in the room.
Sir, who is your nearest competitor of Milestone?
We compete with, the Accentures, we compete with Wipro, we compete with Cognizant, with Tata, with IBM, depending upon, where we are. When you talk about automation and artificial intelligence, we compete with IBM, we compete with Accenture. So it's across the board, IT services company. So we are a 3,000 people company, but at certain times we compete with organizations which are 400,000 employees. So, and we still win most of the time.
You are working on these new emerging technologies, ABCD, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, data analytics. So what sort of disruption you are envisioning in the coming future due to these technologies? I think into the leadership traits.
No, I think a huge amount of disruption. And again, to me, the way I look at it is that, and this is just my personal view, that today, take any time horizon, right? There was disruption when the mainframe computers came in the 50s and the 60s, right? There was disruption in the market when, PCs came in the market, right? Which was started by Apple Macintosh, and then, the MS-DOS operating system came in, and everyone had a personal computer, or at least in the US at that time, people started saying, in the mid 80s that, or 70s that, everyone will have a PC at home. And there were some very, very industry stalwarts at that time who kind of laughed at that idea. What I'm trying to make is that take a time horizon, 10, 15 years, technology has just evolved into huge amount of, disruption in the industry. So to me, whether it's blockchain, to me, whether it's artificial intelligence, to me, whether it's automation, cognitive, now in IBM, I had the privilege of, being involved with quantum computing. And IBM, of course, as you know, I have so much respect for that company, been in business for about 120 years or so. There's a huge amount of R&D that happens there. And quantum computing is, in my mind, something which will completely change the face of technology as and when it is commercialized, probably in the next 5 to 7 years. So to me, these are waves that keep happening, right? And as leaders, it's that notion of constant learning or what's the word, kind of reinventing yourself, right? 10 years back, I had no idea what cloud computing meant, because no one knew what cloud computing meant, right? I had no idea what wonders and what amazing things you can drive with cognitive capability or artificial intelligence. Today we know that. So I think as long as you continue to reinvent yourself, as long as you continue to keep that knowledge, I want to be a sponge, right? I want to absorb, right, more and more knowledge, because things that the only constant is change. The only constant is change. Change will keep happening. Today it's blockchain. Tomorrow it'll be quantum computing. Who knows?
Right. So, sir, last question to you: how to build an inclusive culture in an organization?
I think that's a very, very good question. And again, it starts with the leadership. It starts with the fundamental belief. You cannot, in my mind, this is not something that you can fake it. It has to be real, right? the notion that, each one of us, irrespective of, where we come from, irrespective of the color, irrespective of our sexual preference, irrespective of, the society that we live in, we all have unique capabilities, and we all have different life experiences. And if you truly believe in that, and if you truly believe in the fact that that's how you get different views in the room, you get different views in the organization, that's when you drive through transformation. That's when you drive through, kind of innovation. It just falls in place. It's like a light bulb going in your mind. So to me, and when we kind of double down on our initiative on diversity, equity, and inclusion last year after the unfortunate killing of George Floyd in the US, I did a all hands, at that time, I remember, and I told the team that we're going to double down on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And it is starting off as a program, but it will not be a program. It's not intended to be a program. I intend this to become the fabric of Milestone. I intend this to become and define who we are as an organization. And that truly, and I make it a point. And then again, of course, now we are, kind of over the last 1 year, we've done a lot of work in that area in terms of educating people, training people, because all of us have biases, given our backgrounds, and some of them are very explicit bias, some of them are very implicit bias. We don't even think about it, but it comes out like that, right? Oftentimes I have to correct a lot of my colleagues in the meeting, when we say, I'll give you a very small example, right? We're talking about some team and, we don't know who the person is. And oftentimes by default, someone would say, yeah, we got to talk to him. And I said, no, but we don't know whether it's a him or her. So why don't we just say we were going to talk to her, or we're going to talk to him or her, whoever that person is. You see what I'm trying to say? So it's a very, very subtle thing in the mind. Not that the person who's saying that we're going to talk to him has any disrespect for, the women in our organization. It's not that, but it's just that in the back of the mind somewhere it is that, maybe that work can only be done by a man, which is completely wrong, right? So as a leader, I think you have to be very, very cognizant about these things, and you have to call these things out when you see them happening. And I oftentimes correct so many people in the organization that you mean him or her, right? You don't mean him. That's the way I would say it. So I think these are small things, but as leaders, I think we have to absolutely work on that and make sure that people are recognizing and realizing these kind of things.
Completely agree with you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable inputs with us. Over to you, Nandi ma'am.
So thank you so much. Before we formally end, Shishir sir, would you like to say something about the extensive learning and substantial content that we just had from the session?
Sir,
Sir,
you are on mute.
You are on mute, sir.
I thought I'll be attending for an hour or so because I had other commitments. But the way Samir explained the leadership, the values, the commitment, the passion, the culture, and people first, I think he was amazing. And the lessons our children must have learned, including me, because I also continue to learn from people like you, is something which is awe-striking. And I think, as Gandhiji said, leaders are not those who have large number of followers, but leaders are those who are able to create leaders. And with that thought, I leave it to the students that each one of the students in any capacity, when they go out of the business, go out of the school and work in any capacity, and there are some people around them, they themselves can have that leadership role and create leaders within the organization. And I hope all the students must have greatly benefited from the talk. Thank you once again, Samir. And I'll also personally touch base with you in due course of time. Thank you.
It's totally my pleasure, Mr. Jaipuria. Totally my pleasure. Again, as I said, I owe a lot to who I am today, to the experiences and learnings that I had in the school in Kanpur, in the Jaipuria school, and I owe a lot of gratitude to you, for creating that institution, to late Dr. Rajaram Jaipuria ji as well. and all the faculty, all the teachers, all the administration there. So, and I'm so glad that I got this opportunity, of coming and sharing some of my thoughts.
I'm happy that Dr. Deven Narang and our director and all the faculty members are able to bring in a lot of people who have been our alumni, and they have been connecting with the students and sharing best practices, leadership, and so many other facets and life lessons which people have, that it will a great benefit for our students. And we like to associate you in our ventures so that we can also contribute and give back to the school. Thank you indeed.
Absolutely, it will be my total pleasure, sir, to do whatever little contributions I can do.
Thank you, Ji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
All right, kids. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I would like to extend a formal vote of thanks to you for the wonderful time that you've given us. So students, learning start from the base. Let us take the example of Mr. Kishore, being from the school captain to the CEO of Milestone. An absolutely interactive session, sir. Starting with who the leader is, we got multiple inputs from the students. Then moving on to our leaders born or made. Some of the very different answers were given by the students, being 1/3 born and 2/3 made. We've moved on to the extensive experience that Mr. Kishore has. We moved on to the 5 most important traits of leadership. The first one being clarity, and the importance of clarity in winning aspiration, in the goals, in where to play, how to play, and setting up the culture for the organization. Moving on to the decisiveness in execution. Sir, as you rightly said, vision without execution is a hallucination by Thomas Edison. So shift from office to work from home culture. The only thing constant is change, and do not fear the change. Moving on to the third very important element of leadership, authentic passion. Being passionate, being committed, learning the 2 very important mindsets, playing to win and playing not to lose. The key trait of a leader, the ability to inspire. Then comes impactful communication. So reaching out more than 2,000 people by calling them personally must not have been a cakewalk. You have definitely set up an example for all of us. Moving on to the 5th major important element of inclusivity, diversity, inclusion being the key trait, respecting people by letting them share their views, driving the change in the organization. Yes, sir, we have faced the unprecedented, but mankind is like a phoenix. We will rise from the ashes. With this, sir, I thank you for being with us for the day. My sincere gratitude on behalf of Jaipuria Institute of Management. Thank you for being with us. I would also like to thank Shishir sir for being with us, Dr. Narang, Dr. Vaishne, Dr. Prushti, Dr. Tripathi, and Mr. Sagar as the core team. Thank you, faculty and my dear students. Thank you so much, Sameer sir. With this, I, Sanandi Sachdeva, wrap up the session for the day. Have a great day, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Good luck, everyone. Thank you. Stay safe.
You too, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sameer. Thank you very much for a enriching session.
My pleasure, totally, Professor. My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, sir. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, sir.